Welcome back to This Is How We Create. My name is Martine Severin, your host. What if the secret to creating the most or your most authentic work isn't found in following trends, but in treating every project like it carries your personal signature? Well, today on the show, we're sitting down with Justin Q. Williams, the Atlanta based interior designer who's been quietly revolutionizing how we think about creative entrepreneurship and authentic expression. I am so pleased to welcome Justin to the show. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you, Martine, and thank you so much for having me. You make me sound so fancy, and I do not feel that way.
Of course, you're fancy. Look around your house. This episode is brought to you by iCode. Every child starts as a creator. They imagine stories, build worlds, and ask big questions. But as they grow up, creativity can take a backseat to routine and screens. That's where iCode comes in. Through after-school STEM activities, iCode's programs give kids a space to create again. Visit icodeschool.com to book a free trial. Well, I'm so pleased you're here so that we can talk about your story. Because for any creative who's wondering how to build an authentic work that stands out, this episode is really for them. So, to start out, we always like to start with your childhood. So, Justin, your story starts incredibly early at 12 years old. And at that age, you found your hands, you got your hands on professional design software. This is really not typical child play. What was it about design that grabbed you so early and so completely at that age?
At the time, I was just really captivated by architecture. I loved beautiful houses. My parents would take me on what we call dream drives. And it's typically like a Sunday after church, and we would just go to all of these beautiful neighborhoods, and they would allow me to look at, all of the nice homes because that's what really captivated me and my artistry at that age. And so when I voiced this to them, my dad, he really took interest and he purchased all of these, really expensive software programs that, he did his research on and said, these are the ones that you should have if this is what you're interested in. And he was like, here, teach yourself how to use these, not knowing himself how difficult they were. But I took to it because that's what I loved. And from there, this designer just started to bud.
I love that. Sometimes we go on dream drives as well in my family. So I'll have my son in the car and we'll drive down. There's this neighborhood not too far from where we are. And we drive down. I don't know if this is what it was like for you. We drive down these different roads and with each block we each have to pick out the house that we want. Was it
Yeah.
was it like that for you?
Yeah, it was. It's like you make your dream a reality by doing that, and it's not necessarily happening for you in that moment, but you're able to manifest the things that you want. Even though they may be material things that don't mean much, it's just something that you can work towards and aspire to. And so those dream drives for me meant way more, even as an adult, than they did as a child. I wasn't able to fully appreciate the magnitude that it would have and the lasting effect that it would have in my life now.
From what I hear, for you, around the age of 18 is where you started your own business. So most 18-year-olds, they're figuring out their majors, but you, as I mentioned, started your business. When your professor said, "Take what you're good at and sell it," can you tell me a little bit about what clicked for you in that moment? What did you know about yourself that maybe your peers didn't really know about themselves yet?
Yeah, so I'll add to that because there was a little bit more to it than that phrase. He said, "Take what you're good at and sell it as long as it's legal." So, there was an emphasis on that part. But when he said that, it just clicked for me, and I will forever remember that, even though I don't remember the professor that said it. But I will always remember that because it was an instant revelation, and I thought, I could sell interior design, even though at the time I didn't know that that was a service to be sold, but I was able to take that phrase and it clicked with me. And I just thought instantly this is something that you're good at, so you should sell it.
Well, I know that you have a really great story about your first client. Can you tell me that story?
Yeah, sure. So this was years ago, and a friend of mine, his aunt was moving into a condo, and she came over to my apartment. She saw my apartment at the time, and she thought it was beautiful. And she said, "Hey, can you do my condo?" And I was thinking, "Whew, I don't want to be responsible for somebody else's house." And I talked to my parents, and my parents were like, "Look, go for it, and if anything happens, we'll have your back." So I was like, "Okay, cool." I thought that that was my reassurance to just go ahead and go for it. So I did. And when she came in, she started crying. And I'm thinking, oh God, like I just messed up this lady's house and she's upset. But they were tears of joy. And she was so excited because the space turned out so beautifully. And by the end of that year, I had done 10 units inside her building. And one of them was a famous blogger at the time, that was when tweeting was like the thing. And so she was really popular on Twitter. And she tweeted a photo of me. This was at the time I was doing the painting myself. And she tweeted a photo of me, and my cousin was helping me. And I was on this 20-foot ladder painting her house. And she said her interior designer was here. And so that's when things just really started to spark in my career.
The way you say that, it sounds so easy that you just did the units, but I can only imagine doing that and doing one unit after another, and I'm sure maybe some of them overlapped. How are you feeling during that time? Because a year doesn't just go like that. It took you time. Tell me about like what you were feeling as you were going through and trying to accomplish this great feat.
Yeah, sure. So during that time, I was a youth counselor at a church, Wayuka Road Baptist Church in Buckhead, Atlanta. And so I was balancing my job and then balancing my side hustle, which was interior design. And it was a lot, it was a lot. And I was a lot more hands on then. So picking up the furniture, getting my dad's truck and loading that up and, having help, with unpacking and assembling, and I was painting myself because I knew how to paint just from growing up and working with our family contractor. I knew how to do these things, so I did them myself. And so it was a lot. It was a lot to balance. And so it wasn't until the point where the business started to occupy the most of my time that I left my job at the church and started to work full time with Trademark.
I can only imagine just you still glossed over it. I'm just
I
saying.
know, I know. We don't have enough time for me to go through all the details, seriously. It was a lot. It was
Well,
a
what
lot to
then
handle.
then I guess the question I have is about the lessons that you learned that were really unexpected. Because, I mean, the only way we really learn is by doing. And Tiffany Brooks, who by the time this episode airs will already have been on the show, she talks about how, some people say she is self taught as an interior designer. And she says, no, no, no. She's taught by experience and through experience. What were some of the things that you learned that you completely didn't expect to learn through that year?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is dealing with people. That was interesting because you deal with so many different personalities. And that was one moment in time that taught me that people can be really indecisive. And as a designer, it is up to you to help them make sound decisions and decisions that not only you trust, but they trust. And so that during that time, I knew that interior design was going to be different because there's a high psychology level to what we do. And that is something that I learned. And honestly, I don't feel like you stop learning it because every single client is different. Over the long span of years that I've been doing this, every single client is different. I've never had one client that is the same.
Have you noticed that sometimes you can group client types together? For example, you know how they're in the seven languages of love or however many they are. Are there client types essentially that you've come to notice over the years?
There have been some that have been similar and have similar attributes as it pertains to the process or just an overall mental state because you really do learn people as you're working with them for months at a time. And there are clients that I've become friends with over the years. There are clients that are like family to me now. And there are clients who I've done this long enough that I've done multiple homes of theirs. So it's interesting to see how you grow with your client, from their first house to their now 10,000 square foot house over the years. And so that's something that I really honor when it comes to what I do.
So, one of the things you've said, or what I read, is that you provide a solution to a lifestyle problem. So, when you're assessing a room, how are you reading the space itself? Or are you reading more so the people that live in that space? And what are you looking for usually when you are reading a space?
I always tell people it's easy to create a pretty room. It is much more difficult to create a functional space. That's why when we first enter a home and we have a conversation with the client, it is less about the style and more about the lifestyle. Is this a space where the family gathers every evening? What do you do here? Do you like to sit and drink wine on your couch? Because those questions are going to dictate if I use a performance fabric, if I use something that has a high rub count. So it's really more about function for me over fashion. And I think I even say that in the tagline of the entry line of our show. It's function over fashion, no pun intended. That's the exact line. But it truly is function over fashion for me. And that's really important because you have to think about when you enter your home after a long day, how do you want your home to rise to you, not the other way around?
Oh gosh, that's so true. But
Can't
it's
wait
an
till the next
interesting. Yeah, yeah. So, how did you come to find out or to discover what the Justin Q. Williams design style is? And how did you come to your design voice?
Wow. That is a great question because I feel like my style is ever evolving. And it's interesting when I hear people say, I knew that this room was designed by you before I even read the caption. That is such an honor to me because there are key aspects of a space that have screamed Justin Q. Williams. And I appreciate that because there are key aspects that I like to focus on in spaces. But I do feel like my design style has evolved over time. Like when I was younger and fresh into this, it was a color explosion. I use every color on the spectrum. And that's because that's what I felt was something that spoke to me. But as I got older, my color sense became a little bit more muted, and I felt like that was more sophisticated. There are ways to do color in a sophisticated way, but I really connected with doing neutrals in a sophisticated way. And so that's something that I feel is ever evolving. And who knows what the next chapter for my design style will be. As design evolves, as I evolve, I feel like that is something that is growing every single day as it should. I don't feel like your design style should stay the same. I feel like it's something that should grow just as your craft and your art should grow.
That's so true. We're always changing as artists. We really are. And then the industry changes as well with trends that come in and come out, which I remember back in the day, and you might as well, when black was the color, or people
Uh-huh.
were
Yes, yes.
people
And
were
they took it from
painting.
inside the house to outside the house.
Yes, yes. It's interesting to hear and to see how things have changed from people not liking arches to now it's like, "Ooh, you gotta have an arch."
Like the
So
thing. But honestly, it's a big circle, Once what once was will be again. And so that's how I feel about design. There may be tweaks in there, but what once was will be again. Always.
yeah. Yeah, bootcut jeans are back. So who knows? Well, so you had some incredible mentors in Erica Ward and Annette Joseph who taught you the business of interiors. What are some of the most important lessons they taught you about balancing your creativity with commerce?
Mm. That's a good one. So Erica would always tell me that, it would be a hobby if it weren't a business, but make it a business. And so that's something that I heavily focus on early on and kind of catching up to my business to make sure that my processes were in place. That is something that she taught me heavily. And then with Annette taught me about versatility because when I was under the mentorship of Annette, she was an interior photo stylist. Through that time, through the years that I was with her, she moved into food. And now she's on her maybe third or fourth cookbook. So, it's just being able to have the versatility within or under this umbrella of design to make sure that, of course, you're continuing to evolve. And so that versatility was really important. That's something that I really enjoy learning from her.
It's always really nice to have mentors. And, before the show started, you were talking about when you are entering into a new stage in your life that you often call on people to come in and help you out. How is it being the person who now is helping others come up and teaching others who are entering the industry?
I make it a point to do so because I had that help and I had that mentorship. And why wouldn't I offer that to someone else? And those valuable lessons that I learned and being able to pass those on to someone else. So, I was honored when they asked me to be a part of the Thermador Diversity and Design Pipeline Scholarship Program, where we mentor students. And I'm always honored to have colleges ask me to come and speak to their students. So that's something that I do every single year. And I feel like if there's even just one nugget of advice that I could give these students, they'll be able to carry that into whatever they choose to do with their career in design.
So, to that, what is your most given advice? What's the advice that you give the most to them?
It sounds cliche, but stay true to yourself.
Mm.
And the reason that I say that is because growing up, that's what I did. I knew that I wanted to do something with design. I didn't know what it was, but I was able to cultivate my career into exactly what it's supposed to be, you know, via God's plan for me. But being able to stay true to myself and do the things that I enjoy have rendered, where I am now with my career in design.
And what a career you have. I mean, I don't know, it seems from the outside, and things look so different from the outside than they do when you're in your little life. It looks sexy. It looks like, ooh, this person's doing this person's doing that. But in reality, it's just like the same thing. And it's just like, as my 13-year-old calls it, grinding, meaning like getting up, doing the job, doing it
Yeah.
well, showing up, just doing the thing, and you're doing a lot of different things. What has surprised you about where your career now is versus what you thought it would have been back in the day?
I could give you a really cliche answer and say, "Oh, I always thought that I would do this and be on television and magazines and doing things like that." I did not. I did not know that I would be doing any of what I'm doing, and that's why I always give honor and praise to God because I know that this is nothing but God. I had no idea even as to how I got here, to be quite honest with you. I have had my head down for years and I've done my work. And I looked up and I had done all of these, amazing things. There is not a game plan that I can give anyone to have a great career in design and to be on television and to be published in magazines and in books. There's no game plan that I can give you. I have done the work. I have been under great mentorship. I have honored my craft and I have worked tirelessly. Like the things, like you said, people on the outside looking in see all the glamour and all the things and think that it's such a great, experience, which I can appreciate my experience. It has not always been great. There have been nights that I've cried myself to sleep. There have been nights that I have stayed up all night trying to tweak design plans. There have been nights and days that I've gotten on the road to go to out of town clients and things have gone wrong. And there have been days that I've gone and things have been right. So, there are ups and downs. And that is something that you have to honor about your process and that you have to honor about your journey because every day is not going to be a good day. I have had several no's, and a lot of people refer to Design Star. Design Star told me no when I auditioned initially, and that was when I was 19 years old. I thought I was ready to be on TV and this Design Star and all the things, and they said no. And years later, they called me. So, it's just no audition, nothing. I did not submit for anything.
They had been keeping an eye on you.
Yes. So that's again, you have to honor your journey. Don't get discouraged when people say no because it's not an indefinite no, it's just a no for right now. And what's for you is for you and it will happen. And I can attest to that wholeheartedly.
I think we could finish right here and now and we'd be good.
I do
Oh,
always tell my students that because it's true. And it's what I dislike about the interior design community is that, and I'm guilty of this, we make everything look so luxurious and so easy and so polished when sometimes stuff is real ugly. It's not perfect. It's not polished. You don't know the journey to get from that before picture to that after. There could have been many disagreements, arguments, discord, and that just comes with the territory, but that's also something that I challenge designers to talk about because they don't oftentimes talk about the bad things that happen in design. It's not all bad, but it's not all good either. And it's a very, very tough industry. And if you are thinking that you're going to jump in and it's going to be peaches and cream, it is not. And I would hate for someone to jump in thinking that and have a rude awakening versus someone jumping into it and being prepared for it. And being prepared for it is getting under great mentorship, listening to great podcasts like these where you have people that come on that are going to keep it real. And that is something that people should take heed to when they're thinking about jumping into the industry. And I know that wasn't a question, but I just thought I need to add that.
oh, no, no, no. That was wonderful because I think most people will think that it's a highlight reel when the reality is that most things aren't a highlight reel. Most things are
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
life. And I was watching I was on your Instagram and you went on that wonderful run and you went down a way that you hadn't been before and it looked all really beautiful. But being a runner, sometimes a run is really hard. There are some days where it's nice,
You know,
and there are days where it's
and
hard.
right. But even with that, so I've recently started back running because just the climate that we're in right now, I'm an empath. So I'm oftentimes taking on, a lot of the heaviness of the world. And I'm also one that always wants to be up to date with what's happening around me. And with things being so heavy right now, I had to find an outlet that would allow me to release, that those heavy feelings and running was one of them. So when I stumbled upon that trail not far from my house, I thought this is fantastic. And after the run, I felt amazing. So that's something that I do every week now is go on that trail and enjoy the run and the weather while it's still nice. And yeah, I feel like people should have those outlets because we don't talk about mental health and it's very important. So find something that it is that you love to do and do it and do it as often as you need to.
I love that. So I'd love to talk about Style Kings right now because Style Kings on Aspire TV is explicitly about elevating conversations around men's contribution to art and to culture. That's a much bigger mission than just showing up in beautiful spaces. And I'm just wondering, why was that cultural component important to you?
Yeah, so growing up, I didn't have a lot of examples on television. Dare I say, had any examples on television of Black male interior designers. And when Aspire approached me with this concept, I thought, how great would it be to have a gentleman in fashion and another in interiors that we didn't see a lot of growing up on television, where, kids that are just like I was would have an example to see, to see themselves on television. And it's funny because Aspire's slogan is "See yourself here." And I thought that that was just the perfect opportunity for me to take to be on television with a cause.
Yeah, we need to see ourselves, don't we? And then watching that, it's also really wonderful to see you engage with other Black men and talk about design and people wanting their spaces to be a retreat or a space, their space to reflect, what's going on inside in terms of for them to be able to have the lives that they've always wanted. And it's so wonderful to have somebody show up to help you do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So as we wrap up, some of the things that questions I want to ask you about some of the things that inspire you. You do a lot. You have your design business. You now have a furniture collection that people can buy at most major retailers. And I'm wondering, where do your sources of inspiration come from?
Yeah, so a lot of what inspires my design aesthetic is traveling. I love to travel. I mean, I've gone all over the world and I have a few other places that I would like to go. But just seeing the different architecture around the world and the cultures and how people live, and that just intrigues me. And I always feel like I take a bit back from each place that I visit. That's one thing that inspires me. But another, my family and friends. My family and friends are just really cool, diverse people. And when it came to, the furniture line and, naming it, there's a chair named after my mom. There's a chair named after my dad. There's, different pieces that are named after family members and friends. And they inspire me. And they inspire me for a multitude of reasons. But one is because they've always supported me, even when things didn't look good. You know, when I was talking about starting this business, and uh, my parents, they were never into interiors. Our house was white. Everything was white. It was just kind of plain and simple, and the things that they could find on the showroom floor they would bring it home, and that was that. There was never like layers and colors and all of the things that I choose now. But they didn't really fully understand where I was going with this, but they supported it because they knew that I loved it. And that is very inspirational for me and has been over the years.
How has your definition of success changed over time?
Mm. So when I was younger, success was all about money. How much money you got? But what success is now is how many people have you impacted? Sounds, kind of corny, but that's how I measure success. When I have in my office this board, so about a 2 foot by 4 foot board, and it's full. It has this beautiful saying on. I can't, you know, tell you word for word, but has this beautiful mantra in the center, and it's a magnet board. And all around that magnet board, it's gotten to the point now where I'm having to put things around the actual board itself because it's full of thank you notes from either events that I've spoken at or students that I've spoken to, just all sorts of different people who have written me just these inspirational notes or these thank you notes. And that for me is really is the most valuable thing to me in my office, but it's also one of the most valuable things to me in my heart because that means that something I said or something that I did impacted that person. And that for me is just, that makes me feel like the richest man in the world.
Oh, well, Justin, it was so wonderful to talk with you. I really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you. I did as well. Thank you for having me.
Hi there. If you're loving the show, would you mind taking a quick second to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite go-to podcast app? While you're at it, subscribe to our Substack newsletter, Creative Matters. You can find the link to subscribe in the show notes. All right, that's all that I have for you today. Bye.